Yes, friends, I hope all of you can hear me. Please, can I get yes in the chat window? Yes, thank you very much, Krishnan, Sudhir, Satya. Yes, loud and clear, is it? I hope you can see my screen also, right? Evaristo? Thank you very much. Yes, Krishnan. So this is Tejas here. I am from Bangalore city. Basically, I am a software developer and architect, and I work as an independent consultant. So I do have 18 years of IT experience. So I got some certification at 1997 itself, and then worked throughout on Java technologies, embedded systems. So this is my just brief, and I will be taking your webinar today on Springs, right? So yes, friends. So please, can I get a small brief introduction of yourself, friends, before we go ahead? Krishnan, Sudhir, please, can you all introduce yourself? Just a number of years of experience. Evaristo, did you finish my big data course last week? I had one student. Yes, fantastic. So having 3 years experience in Java, fantastic, Sudhir. Yes, Krishnan says 3 years again experience in banking domain. So again, I welcome all of you to this webinar, right? So today we will introduce basically what is Spring Web MVC, mainly practical oriented view I will give on Spring Web MVC, right? And also let us see what is a small introduction about big data, and then how to integrate Spring with big data also, right? Today we will see this, and then we also commencing this new course which is more emphasizing on Spring 4 and integration with big data and then real-time projects. So you can please go to this website and then link and then see, right? For any queries you can see these things. So objectives of today's webinar is basically at the end of this webinar you should understand the need of a Spring framework, role of Spring framework itself in enterprises applications, right? So I will also just brief, not much, but just brief on Spring modules, right? So basically you will understand what is Spring. That's where I said I will emphasize more on practical oriented today rather than talking technically, theoretically more. So I will show you practically. I will start with springifying a simple application. Means I will just take a normal JSP servlet application, right? And then I will just show you how to convert that to a Spring application, that to Web MVC application, right? So and then how to modularize it, and then how to use database connections, everything I will show you. Once I finish that, again I will also show you we have developed a project on calendar application for online education. So that is just for again a demo purpose, right? So I will just explain what are the modules included Spring as far as Spring is concerned again here. And finally I will also brief introduction about big data, and also we will see how to integrate with the big data using Spring itself, right? So I hope all is set. So all is set and all of you can able to hear me well, and then I think we can go ahead, right? Please, can I get yes from all of you, friends? So 1 year of big data technology is fantastic, Krishnan. Nice to see you're already in big data, Krishnan. Hi Tejas, I am previous batch Hadoop student. Yes, Swapna, I can able to recall because lot of names repeats, right? I hope Evaristo and then you have joined back, I think. Evaristo, I hope. Is also from my batch, right? Yes, thanks for coming. Yes, yes, Evaristo. So now let us, as I said, basically I will focus more on practical oriented than theoretically talking, right? So let us let us see what is this Spring framework itself, and then what is the need, why we need Spring framework, and what are the roles, what is the modules, and then how Spring framework can be used in enterprise applications, right? Let us start. So now we all know when we develop applications in Java, right? So we can develop desktop-based applications, we can develop web-based applications. So mainly I'll emphasize more towards web applications. When I say Java, so I'm not referring now any desktop-based application. Basically, Swings is much, if you know Swings, right, that is good enough for you to write any desktop-based applications, right? Probably you can also architect desktop application also in a MVC pattern way, but more, if you see today, enterprise, we all use more web applications itself, right? So I will emphasize more on web MVC today. So in Java technology, there are many frameworks that helps programmers to easily build complex applications, right? So long back when we started working, we developed many applications just by using servlets, not even JSP. You can just imagine. So in servlets, we used to embed all these HTMLs, right? So later on, technologies improved, and then we could able to see JSP servlets, JSP where you could embed HTML plus backend server-side programming also, right? So now, as we come forward, we could able to see huge frameworks, right, to help. Maybe again, why do we use frameworks itself? Basically, incorporating new functionalities or making changes or testing or reusability of the code will become much easier when we use frameworks, right? But in Java, as far as web frameworks are concerned, when we say application development, as far as web application, that too, we have lots and lots of frameworks, right? You can choose these frameworks for building your applications, like Hibernate, for example, to persist object in DB, right? In the DB, we just create a class and map them to the DB table. So Hibernate will take care of underlying DB access mechanism, right? So we don't have to worry. So we just create a simple class and map them to the DB tables. Our queries will be really easy by using Hibernate. This is ORM, that is, we call it as object request mapping tool, right? This framework. So like coming back, struts, again, framework was from our web MVC framework, right? Struts. Again, model, view, controllers, we can segregate using struts. Again, enterprises, if you see enterprises applications, we use enterprise services many times, like transactions, security, messaging. So we may use EJBs for that, right? And logging applications. So now if you see, this list goes on, right? So this list never ends. As the business requirement evolve, so this list also grows, right? For us, for our business requirement, if it is getting more, so we will try to use many frameworks itself. So each framework provides a specific set of features that can be used in our application. We all understood this now. So what is the problem now is varied framework and services will end up to difficult to maintain the application itself. For example, problems, you want to make a small changes in the application, it will be difficult if you have many varied frameworks, right? So now each class interact with various classes if you have written varied, if you have used varied frameworks itself. For example, when you use, say for example, framework X, right? For the purpose of, basically it forces a lot of classes. When you write class implementing a framework, it will inherit a lot of classes, it will implement a lot of interfaces, right? So we actually, our code should be loosely coupled with a lot of frameworks when we are working. Basically, we should use simple Java classes and still use these frameworks. Otherwise, it will be really difficult for testing, reusability, right? Or incorporating new functionalities or making changes, it will be really difficult, right? That is the challenges if you use multiple frameworks in an application, in a big enterprise applications, right? As application grows, right, it will be really difficult to maintain, right? That's where the problem is. Applications that use varied frameworks and services are difficult to maintain as they grow. That is the problem, right? So what we need solution is application that use a number of frameworks and services have to remain, which uses number of frameworks and services have to remain maintainable, right? So for that, what we need, our codes to be loosely coupled with frameworks, not tightly coupled, so that when you use classes, they will implement a lot of their interfaces, they will inherit a lot of their classes, right? So code should be loosely coupled with the frameworks so that testing, reusability becomes easy, right? So that's where we look at Spring framework, right? So basically, Spring framework provides lightweight solution to develop, maintain, and reusable enterprise applications. When we say enterprise applications, we can use all these different frameworks at one platform. Under one umbrella, you can integrate all these frameworks very easily by using Spring. It provides a simple and rich facility to integrate various frameworks, technologies, and services in the application. That's where we may look at learning Spring, right? So now any applications, now if you see majority of enterprise applications, we started working on Spring because of this reason, right? So now to summarize, Spring, we say, we can summarize Spring in two ways. Spring is a container which takes classes into application and then create objects and manage the life cycle of those objects, that too for different frameworks. And then we can also call it as Spring itself as a framework, that is a library that provides a foundation layer. You don't have to write anything from scratch. For example, Web MVC if you are using, so you can write complete web model, right, web application MVC with MVC pattern from scratch very easily, right? So many times we say Spring as a container, right? So just what do we mean by a lightweight container? Basically, Spring framework, we call it as a lightweight container as it does not have to install configuration, start service associated with a container. You just untar the jar file, that's all, right? You just use the jar files and then use, that's all. So you download jar files of Spring, you use it. You don't have to install, you don't have to configure, you don't have to do anything much. That too, if you are using tools like Eclipse, any IDEs like Eclipse, it is very simple. I will just show you if for a non-Spring application how to convert easily and then use it, right? So architecture wise, if you see Spring, right? So as I said, it provides a lot of integration with other APIs, frameworks, tools. Other than that, Spring also has a lot of features like AOP, dependency injections. Probably if we go in deep, right, it may take a lot of time. I will just brief everything. I will just brief maybe about each of thing. For example, data access, data integration. Data access or integration, if you see, we all know when we use JDBC, right? JDBC code in our Java program, so it involves a lot of plumbing work, right? So create connection, statements, executing queries, handling exceptions, right? But if you use in Spring, we have a lot of templates to ease our work, right? So now if you use templates, you don't need to worry about all these plumbing works. We can focus on supplying query to these APIs and process it. As much simple. We can do using Spring framework in a simple way. Probably when you say practically, I will also explain this again, right? So what are these templates? How can we use it? I will show you today, right? And ORMs. What are these ORM? As I said, hibernate, right? Object relational mapping, right? So to persist object in the DB, right? So I also told you simple class we create and map them to the tables and then submit queries, right? Easy way. So these ORM tools, a lot of ORM tools, they will take care of underlying DB, right? Hibernate, top link, Java data objects. There are a lot of plenty of ORMs are available, right? So Spring provides a rich set of classes that makes working with this ORM easy way, right? So it provides a lot of rich set of classes, we can integrate with all these ORMs in an easy way, right? We can just focus on mapping logic, not to worry about how to use the core APIs of individual ORMs, right? And OXM, basically we call it as object XML mapping. It is a mechanism which converts object into XML format, and vice versa. We say converts or marshal object into XML formats, or vice versa. There are Caster, Extreme, there are a lot of popular frameworks are used, right? OXM, as far as OXM is concerned. Again, here also Spring provides a uniform API to access any of these OXMs again, right? And then Java messaging service. This is a standard API for asynchronous messaging, right? When I say asynchronous, JMS will only take care of delivering message to the client. There may be client requesting to the server, right? So JMS messages, so messages delivery will be taken care by JMS itself to the client as they arrive it. So it will deliver to the client who is requested. So in an easy manner. So client doesn't have to wait for the messages, right? So basically messaging service, if you see, it involves a lot of code, but Spring provides simple APIs, right? Example, just let me take a small example. Assume you are writing, say, stock price publisher. Basically assume you are writing a stock price publisher, maybe it publishes stock quotes at regular intervals. Assume your application publishes stock quotes at a regular interval. Any application can subscribe and start receiving those messages, right? So using Spring templates and then JMS listeners of Spring, it makes it very easy to write JMS messaging services. We can use messaging servers like MSQs, ActiveMQs, simple applications you can develop. You can use JMS templates to create and send messages. You can use JMS listeners to process them, right? So it makes it easy when you use Spring. So again, transactions, I hope all of you have known, right? All of you are experienced, maybe around minimum I could able to see 3-4 years experience, 3-4 years of experience. So I can understand you all know what is this transaction means, right? Basically, if you see this database transactions, right? So we say a sequence of actions that are treated as a single unit of work, maybe for transactions, right? So this action should be either complete entirely, it should complete entirely, or take no effect at all. If you have a list of actions, you should not take any effect at all. Maybe for a transactions, you should run that too in a milliseconds. So now it has to update or not update, right? So this is basically to ensure data integrity and consistency. In RDBMS, we know that they adhere to the ACID property, right? Atomicity, consistency, right? So now it ensures data integrity and consistency here, right? So again, here Spring provides abstract layer on top of different transaction management APIs, right? So also provides a lot of types of transactions here, programmable, declarable transaction management, everything it does, right? So that means again, it makes our life easier when we do transactions, when we do anything to do with your data access, right? So ORMs, JMS, any functionality, if you use Springs, it's very easy, right? Again, I said, like, let us focus more this example also practically on web, right? So again, web. So we have a lot of things like simple web. When I say here, it provides basic web-oriented integration features. This module provides basic web-oriented integration features. Again, here it initializes IOC containers, inversion of control. I will come back maybe next one slide. I have an IOC. I will just explain about it, right? So this web servlet basically contains Spring MVC for web applications, right? Basically, when I say MVC, it provides a separation between domain model and web forms. We write separately forums, we write domain model separately, we will see it. So again, structs we all know, right? So again, web also integrates a classic struct web tier, right? So Spring integrates with a classic, so you can have structs flavor on Spring also, right? And portlet again provides MVC implementation to be used in a portlet environment. Something like we say pluggable UI software component, right? Portlet. So in a small portlet, you want to implement, you want to provide MVC implementation, you can use Spring portlets. At the same time, we have core components, right, which will take care of beans, which will take care of core objects, context, expression language, right? So this core provides fundamental parts of framework, including IOC, dependency injections, right? So beans, basically implementation of factory pattern we say. I will explain this as we go ahead. Next slide, dependency injection when we see, I will just explain this, right? So context again, this is a medium to access objects defined and configured in your applications, right? So we will also see we have application context, we have beans, all these things, and the expression language for querying and manipulating object graph, right? So that is core, and then AOP and testing, all these are features, right? So testing, all of you know, right? Testing Spring components also gives facility to integrate with probably Spring components we can test with the JUnit, TestNG frameworks again. So core and AOP is the main features of Spring. AOP means basically we have something we call something called cross-cutting concern. That is some functionality that affects multiple points of an application. Example, let us take security. Many methods in your application have to implement security, right? Can have security applied to them, right? So now multiple times, instead of you writing this type of cross-cutting concern, you can use aspect-oriented programming, aspects, right? Again, aspect J, another popular AOP implementation, can complement again Spring AOP framework. Right. So all these things belongs to Spring, and there are lots and lots of modules, data integrations, right? So now key components of Spring framework is dependency injection and aspect-oriented programming, right? So basically dependency injection is the basic design principle on which core Spring framework is built, dependency injection. For example, in simple terms, assume in a class X, if it requires a class Y functionalities, what we do, we create class Y and then we use it, right? So we used to write a lot of codes. So as far as dependency injection is concerned, we don't have to write a number of lines of code to create and use. Basically, when I say dependency injection, it injects object Y into X during runtime. It helps us to inject this Y into X, object Y. So what that means, it avoids writing unnecessary creation codes, lookup codes, all these things, right? That is dependency injection. It also helpful, it will be really helpful in loose coupling, right? You can write separate classes and then just request Spring to, after runtime, you can just ask Spring to inject the required components, right? For example, DAO, data access object, DAO component, assume you write it for data sources, right? You can define data sources itself as a component. And then in your DAO class, you can just use those data sources. I will show you practically what do I mean by DAO class, how to access these data sources at runtime, that too, right? So as I said again, aspect-oriented programming, right? When I say we take care of this cross-cutting concern, which is repeated in all lots and methods and classes. So we will we will avoid writing a lot of repetitive codes in many classes using aspect-oriented programming, right? So when I say dependency injection, right, Spring provides beautiful layer. We call it as Spring Factory, XML files, and then objects. Say, for example, you need to say, basically say, let us take, you need to create a lot of objects, right? In Spring, what you can do is you can create them as beans, and then let this bean factory, it is a container, this factory container itself used to manage, create, and then manage the life cycle of the bean. We'll leave everything to this bean factory, and at runtime when we need, we'll just ask the beans to this bean factory at runtime. So now what happens is you don't have to write unnecessary codes here, like dependable codes, like creating lookup table. You don't need to write here. I'm sorry. Yes, you just configure them. That's all. And Spring loads them at runtime. Right? In a typical Spring application, what we do is we create simple Java beans and wire them. Wiring means different springs, right? Associating different itself, we call it as wiring. So now, as I said, in a typical Spring application, we create just Java beans and pair them together and let the container to manage. So container will take care of loading them, setting them, and managing their life cycle. Right? So something like we just create some beans and we configure them. There are methods, there are multiple ways to configure. We can also configure in a simple XML file about this. We can also configurations. Right? This bean factory reads from XML files. We also call it blue, and hands over the files, objects at runtime. We have two interfaces, and containers. One is bean factory application context. So now we will show you, I'll also explain these containers again as I go. When you will definitely understand. As I said, again, cross-cutting concern, right? After development, functions that span multiple points of an application are called cross-cutting concern. For example, logging. You may have to use logging function in many steps, right? So they are constantly separate from applications logic, but often embedded directly within, correct? So those separate concerns you see, transaction, logging, they are all separate concerns. But if you see, we will use inside each object. So separating cutting from business logic is where AOP stands, right? Using AOP, we can still define common functionality in a one place. Declaratively and where this functionality to be used without necessarily any class here. By using AOP, we tell this maybe ABC method of this logging we run to run before ABC method of this class or after ABC method of this class. Say assume you have ABC method, XYZ methods here in these classes. So now at the configuration level, what we can do is, so now we can say this logging has to be executed before this method. This transaction method has to be before this method. So what we do is basically we write aspects, we call it as aspects, that is these concerns, right? And then configure to apply, where they have to be implemented. We call it as aspects, like all these aspects we write in a configuration file where they have to implement on this. So in this way, what happens is, say now for some reason you don't want to run this logging in this application. So you don't have to change anything code here. You just change in the configuration. That's all. Right? You don't have to change application actual business logic. You don't have to change. You can separate the and you can use it. You can modify them. You can update them at runtime, you can say, right? So looks like a lot of theory and then maybe again concepts. As I said, once we see some of the programs, right? Let me again reflect to them. But when I show this program, right? Let me explain this and then explain the relative terminologies again here. You might understand very well, right? So now MVC pattern. So now let us directly talk about Spring MVC, right? So Spring MVC provides basically to develop MVC application. MVC application that use services core Spring framework. So basically MVC, sorry. MVC pattern means we in a web application we segregate view concerns separately with business logic. Basically we introduce something called controllers which takes care of requests to the application. So these controllers are intelligent enough which business logic to implement and what views to show in MVC model. So these MVC patterns is the de facto standard for web developers. Most enterprises application uses easy maintenance, right? MVC. So now if you see MVC, as I said, it uses it uses the services of core Spring framework in this MVC. So now what are we seeing here is Spring Web MVC, right? Say these are clients, right? Web clients. So now any browsers. So when you run an application and hosted in a web server, assume this is a server. So now you have hosted application here. Any request comes to your web server. So initially first, right? So we have something called dispatcher servlet in Spring. So dispatcher servlet will take care of these requests. Right. So dispatcher servlet will map request to the controllers. Maps controller and dispatches this request. We have a servlet. So probably we will maybe I don't want to go too detailed. When I show example, I will explain what is this dispatcher servlet, how to practically. Let me show you now. So how can we create a dispatcher servlet itself, right? So this is basically a servlet program. So now it maps to a separate controller. So this controllers takes all these requests and then intelligently maps to the model, and then it creates which view has to be replied for which request, right? And then it sends back to this servlet again. So once it sends back which view, so dispatcher servlets again uses some resolver, again view resolver we call it as, to put it onto again beautiful fashion, but maybe UI, maybe again JSTL or JS applications, any UI, right? So that will be integrated in the view resolver itself. So now based on the return of view from this controller, so dispatcher servlet map it to the resolvers. So resolvers will show the UI integrated and then final result to the browsers. So this is the basic flow, and these are the main architectures. I hope a lot of theory today, probably just let me explain in practical, you will all understand very well, right? So there are several ETL tools in market. How Spring is different from those data integration with big data. Data integration with big data. See, it is nothing like ETL tool is extract, transform, load, right? When I say Spring, we can write enterprise application itself, which is using backend as big data as the data source. Probably when I say big data, we have a lot of things again. So directly SDFS data you can collect, or also you can do crude operations by using HBase. HBase, billions of record we can store. Again, in Spring, it is very simple to integrate and to HBase and then analyze the data. Probably today I may not be in a position to show HBase, but I will show you a single desktop application how to write, MapReduce, and analyze STFS data. Right. So we will see that today, Krishnan. So I hope all of you understood this data. We need to have dispatcher servlet we need to write, and then we need controllers. Controllers are again simple diagrams which will map each request and then talk to backend models, business logic, and then probably create business logic data and then send it back to the UI. So before actually goes to the user, so now controller tells in which UI it has to be, with model which UI name it has to show for a particular request. So dispatcher based on the UI name, so it maps view resolver and then show to the user. So if once you understand in detail of this flow, it will be very easy for you to write Spring Web applications, right? So now let us see with one small example itself, right? Before we jump into actual Spring Web MVC, I will show you normal simple just login page with normal servlet and JSP application, right? So let me copy this to a new project, copy, and then maybe I'll name it as just to test, right? So now if you see typical web application, right? So we have this XML, we have this view layer, that is JSPs, right? We might have all this CSS, all these things here, and then web XML here. Then server side, anything you need to write, we'll write as servlets, and then we keep it here. I'm not referring to any other MVC patterns here. I'm just taking a simple example of JSP servlet based application. Right. So now you see here in this login page, I'm just taking username and password. Right. This is the UI which will be shown first. How this will be shown in first, because we have written welcome list login.jsp. Right. In WebXML, because we have written welcome list file login.jsp, this login.jsp will be shown. Right. Once the data you enter here, so now we say action to be taken against this check login, right? Again in WebXML, I have defined if it is check login is the URL pattern, I need to run this servlet. That is the path. If you see code.edureka.login check, right? So login check again is a simple application. I'm just taking it and then checking it if it is Edureka user. So now if it is successful, I'm sending it to welcome. Otherwise, again to login. So welcome is nothing, just a welcome to Edureka page, right? So this is a basic flow of normal application, right? Now just let me run before I convert this to run on server. So now next, let me keep only one file. So now execute. Now if I give wrong data, just it is sending me back to login page itself. And then if I say Edureka 123, it is going to the welcome page. Simple application, right? So now actual practicals, let us start. Like first step, what I do is I will show you how to convert this to a Spring project. Right. So in your Eclipse, you need to go to the marketplace here, and I think it is in Windows, right? Or Eclipse marketplace, right? You need to go to this marketplace and then you need to add Spring features here. So you just add search for Spring IDE. Your system should be connected to internet, so it will add all your Spring modules here. Right. So coming back again, one more thing is I am using completely Maven here, so which will ease our lot of work, right? So now Maven also has to be integrated from marketplace, right? Probably you can take little help from Google. So how to include Spring IDE, how to include again Spring functionality with Maven here. If you are using Lunar Eclipse, it comes with Maven. Just you need to include Spring. Right. So now, if assume I will assume that you will do that. So it is very simple, right? Just go to the marketplace which I have shown. If your system is connected to internet, it will download and then it will install. Right? You can just Google it. It's very simple step. So now again, because of time permit, right? So this practical which I am going to show now, maybe it take exact maybe around 30 minutes, right? So because of time limit, so I have just taken all the programs, I have kept it ready, but don't worry, I will just explain each line. It doesn't mean without explanation I will just copy. I will just explain also in detail, right? Though I have made ready, so it may take around 30 minutes, 20 to maximum say 30 minutes to springify this simple model. So once you understand in detail what I'm going to show now, you can definitely build complex application on top of that. So that's the way in actual real-time production how we use Spring framework, right? So now I will show you how to springify this small module itself and then how to write modularized program, right, using Spring. So because I wanted to springify, so now first step, that is I have written this step by step what I am doing here. Probably you can request to support our Edureka team and then take these files also, right? Request this file after this webinar, right? If you are interested, you can just send a mail. I'll mail this to support team, you can take it from them, right? So first step what I'm going to show is springifying the project. So now what I do is I will delete all this servlet code and then WebXML code and then this JSP files from this existing, because I don't need this now servlet file now, right? Servlet code I don't need now, right? So now let us see how we do validations, everything using Spring application. So let me delete first this package itself. So now let me close all and then let me stop the server. So now in the web XML, right? So I have this welcome file, I have this servlet file. So let me delete all these files. So now my web XML is very clear, right? So now I also delete these files. I have these files ready written, so you don't have to worry whether I will be sitting and coding or what. I will not do that. So I will explain, though I will copy it, I will explain them, right? Now it is very clean, right? So now we have web XML and then I have deleted this servlet which was not needed. So first step, when I say springify the project, I need to include all the jar files which is needed by this Spring application. All of you notice here, right click, right? And then I will say configure this to convert to Spring Maven, convert to Maven project. I have given convert to Maven project first. Sorry friends. So now this group ID is nothing, you can just give some package name here like org.edureka.spring and artifact ID, let us leave it like this. So just say finish, it will create a POM file for us, which will be detailed file of all our jar files which has to be included. POM file is basically Maven's file, XML file, right? So now you just, if you are not selected this, you just click on that Maven which is created. So now you click on this dependencies, right? When you click on this dependencies, you will see this add button. You can add all the jar files from searching in this window. By searching from this window, you can get all the jar files, right? So now you just type org.springframework. Let me copy this because I need to do 2-3 times. I need to type this. So now first let try to understand. I am including org Spring core module. Again, latest version is 4.1, right? So next again I will take or I will search for org Spring framework, and then I will take this beans, right? So org framework beans, I am taking it now. So again I will take context. So these three are very important jar files which you need to have. These three are basic jar files which you need to have. What are they? Core files, beans, and context. Now let me also take JDBC related plus web related jar files. So just I will come back again here. So now again I will tap. So you can just come down here and see JDBC also here. Just click on this. So you don't need to worry if of versions, all these things. See how simple it is. I'm just searching and then including them here, right? Right, it searches basically. Yes, I forgot to tell you, you need to have internet for this. It all connecting to internet, and then it is in sync with web. So you are getting this. So once when you save this, it will all be downloaded to your application. I will show you that once I finish with all these connections. Now for web, I need to take another 2 jar files. That is, components. That is this web jar plus web MVC also I will take. Web MVC also. So these many jars are good enough. Core, beans, context with JDBC, web, and web MVC. So now you can just come to this pom.xml and see all these have been registered here, dependencies in the XML, right? So you just save it here, so you can see it has started downloading everything. So because I have connected to internet, it has already downloaded all these things. So now first step what I have done, I have just converted this to a Maven project, and then I have added all the jar files. First step what I did, I converted this and then I have added all the jar files. So now if you want to check whether Maven is included all the jar file for this just to test, you can go to this Java resources, libraries, and then check here Maven dependencies. You can see all these jar files have come here, right? So core, if you click, you can see all the classes here. It is already downloaded, right? So first step, we have deleted it and then included all the jar files, right? Now I need to add servlet, dispatcher servlet. So let me come back to this diagram. So this dispatcher servlet is what I'm trying to add now, right? So how to do that? All of you notice here. So now just right click on this application, right? Go to new, other, and say servlet, right? So click on this servlet. So you say use an existing servlet or JSP. So now if you say browse, so if you have included all this Spring project, you should see this dispatcher servlet here. org Spring Framework Web Servlet, dispatcher servlet. So core web module as this. So now double click on it, select it, and then say finish, right? So now in the web XML, if you see, right, so it has added that dispatcher servlet. This core web framework is added here, dispatcher servlet, right? So now I will map all URL request. So any URL request, just backslash, that means all the URL request I'm mapping to this servlet class. I hope all of you know basic JSP servlets. I understand. I assume that you know this. Now you know what I am doing here, right? So I can also say here, so now load on startup once, right? I will save this. Now this is my web XML where any request I'm mapping to this dispatcher servlet. Right. So now this dispatcher servlet is a Spring framework component, right, which will load context from XML files. Very, very important point. This point all of you need to understand, right? So this component will load context from XML file from a predefined location. XML file is a configuration file, so predefined location, bean. Now that is, it refers, best way is we define an XML which should be there in this web INF directory. So it will load this context, whatever this context, any request comes. So this context will be loaded from this XML file which we're going to create now, right? For this configuration file, always keep in mind we need to give the same name. So I will copy this dispatcher servlet name. So I will come here, I will click on this web INF, right? I will say new other, I will just say Spring here. So it is Spring bean configuration file, right? So as I said, I need to name, same name I give. So dispatcher servlet -servlet I will define, and then I will finish it. One thing keep in mind, you should always give this name, whichever name that you are specifying here. You can actually change this servlet name whatever you want, right, based on application. So simple login application, I can say simple login here, and then I need to map that same name to here to call this servlet. Whatever I enter here, same name I need to specify here so that it will call this dispatcher servlet, and this dispatcher servlet load the context from this XML. Right. So now I have just specified that as add a dispatcher servlet. Right. Second point, what I did, I just added a dispatcher servlet like this. And then next I created a bean as the above same name, which is mentioned in the XML, to configure controllers, what it has to call, right? So when it loads this context, it will refer to some controllers, basic controllers, where it has to go. So now we need to write this controller part. So my default context will map to any controller which I define here in this bean. Right. So for this controller, I will create a package, and then I will create a class called login controller. Right. That is, I have done this job now. I am writing this controller now. Right. To write a controller, what I do is I will create a separate package in the source file. To write a controller, I will create a separate package in the source file. Right. So I will create, right click, new package. I will specify as org.edureka.spring.controller. Edureka.spring.controller. Right. So now I have created a package. I will just create a new class here. What is this? This is a controller. So to save time, I'll just copy this package which I have created already. And the class, I mean to say, right? So now what I'm trying to do is I am writing a controller. So now for this controller, I am using annotation. If you say at controller, this class will act as a controller. Right, and this and inside this controller, I am defining if any request comes from basic path, right, backslash, right, any request comes to go to home, return just home. That means I am just saying, see here in this diagram, I am creating a controller. I am not using any model business logic here. I am not using any business logic model here. I am just telling go to home. In this controller, I am just nothing I am using here. I am just saying go back to home. Right? Any request, go to home, I am telling, right? So now dispatcher servlet has to understand this, and then it has to return what home page it has to show. That is responsibility of, again, this dispatcher servlet, right? That is this configuration file. Dispatcher servlet configuration file's job is to understand that request and then send to respective UI. Now one more important thing now you need to understand here. How will we map this configuration file to this controller? You need to understand this, right? You have written a separate package here, controller. How will you map this to this? You need to understand, right? So now to map this controller, I click on the controller, dispatcher select controller. I go to namespace. I will say context, and then I will click on Web MVC. So it will add these two tabs. So come to context in the beans, you just right click and say component scan, right? You right click and say component scan. Which package you need to scan, you need to specify that. I want to scan this controller package. So right click and then I will copy the qualified name. I will put that here, package. Now next, everything in this class is annotation based. How will I say that? In MVC, I will come here, right click and say it is annotation driven. Now if I come back to this source, right, I can see it says component scan this package, and then everything is annotation driven file. So now our Spring will understand, okay, this is the simple configuration you need to do to tell what are the controllers, where it is, in which package they are, and then annotation driven, whether all these are annotation driven, everything you specify in this way. Right. So what did we do? We added component scan and annotation, MET annotation. So now you see these are the namespaces. It is also added here when we added. So you can just type this XML also, or as I have done, right? You just go here and then do create by using this UI. By using this UI also, you can do this. Now what we have done, we have said controller. So to this configuration file. Now finally I need to add something called view resolvers. So now if this login is telling me go to home, so where to go, what is that home is, I need to resolve it through some view resolvers. How will I do that is, I will just click on this beans again, right? So new bean I will click, ID I will give it as view resolver. View resolver, correct, right? So view resolver, and then I need to take this class. So now I am mapping to ORG Spring Framework Web Servlet View Resolvers. Right. So this will be used to just map our Java server pages tag library. Also you can use by using this resolvers, right? So now I'll just use internal, this is internal resource view resolver, and then say finish. So now here I can also specify file name. It is just, it is coming here as home, right? So what is prefix to that, what is suffix to that, I can add in this configuration. In this view resolver itself, I can add it. So right click on this beans, you say insert property name suffix, or first I will say prefix, right? prefix, say I assume I will create all these JSP files inside this webinf folder. So now you need to specify that webinf backslash. So now and then assume also I will put inside a JSPs folder, JSPs. So now backslash I need to specify because I'm trying to create now all JSPs inside this. So that's where I'm prefixing with this text. Right now again on the view resolver I need to give suffix also I will try to give. So now insert this and then say name suffix. And what are the files? Now they are all JSP files. We are using JSP internal view resolvers to JSPs, right? So now .jsp. Now you save it and then see source code. You should see something like this in the main context configuration bean, which this dispatcher servlet will call. Right? You are configuring what packages for controller to scan, whether they are annotation based, and then which view resolver you have to show, everything you are configuring. Now, if you have this JSP file which is coming from this home in this package, that is good enough for Spring to understand and then show. Right? So now let me create that JSP file here. So new folder JSPS, as I have created JSPS. So now I will create new JSP file inside it calling home, right? So home is just name I have given. So now I have given suffix, prefix in the view resolvers. It understands this and then it shows this now, right? So let me change this to my programmer. So now I have written all the steps in detail. Make above Spring Bean load this file. That is, so you need to use component scan, MVT annotation scan, everything I have written, right? So now in Spring Bean view resolver also I need to add. This we have done, right? So now finally I am adding this home.jsp. I am adding this home.jsp, nothing but same previous login page. Same previous login page. Now I have not written welcome, so if I click it will show page not found because I have not written welcome, right? So let me just show you now. If you test this program, if I test this program by just running from run as a server, now it has to come to this servlet. So now dispatcher servlet has to load this through this context. It has to scan all these controllers. So now in the controller we have said, we have mapped any request, just plain request if it is coming root request. So go to home. So again dispatcher servlet knows home dot everything, it will map this prefix to this and then suffix to this and then it goes to respective folder and then it refers this JSP file. If I run, it should show me login page. If everything is fine, so it should run and then show this login page. Yes, only one. If everything successfully done, right? So now it should show that login page, mapping to the login page through this context. Can you all see this? So now we have successfully converted this basic login page of old application to now Spring application where we have added. So let me come back to this diagram. We have added dispatcher servlet. We have written a controller, though we have not used model yet, right? Model I am not used till now, right? So now just I have written view from this controller. What is the view? Just home. So now dispatcher servlet understood through view resolver which page it has to show, right? View resolver had this suffix, prefix, everything. So it is attached and then it is showing, it is returning that to the page. So that is this. So it is searched this JSP page and then it is showing this home.jsp here just by home. So now you see this controller, just it is returning home. So my view resolver, it is resolving it and then it is showing it. Now we have finished almost 30% of the demo, right? So another 30% I will just add JNDA naming interface, basically Java naming directory interface, right? So and then create a resource, right? So Java source for Java data source, sorry. So data source and then add it probably, and then next I will also create here DAO object, right? So now 3 levels again. First level of demo is over, so I just want to check whether everything is going ahead, everything is fine, all of you are there probably. So please, can I get yes from all of you friends? Is all fine? You are slowly understanding it, right? So practically you can understand once I finish the session, you can follow these videos and then you can get through, right? So please, can I get yes from all of you friends? I thought maximum it may take 30 minutes. I think it is crossing 30 minutes. I think it may take more than that. So I'm sorry for this. Probably you can see video. I am just going slow because I wanted you to understand very well, right? So database, I will do Java naming JNDA, that is Java naming directory interface, right? So now what is this about detail you want to understand? Please check here. You just go to Google, right? So for this JNDA, you just say, write. So I'm installing this JNDA in my Tomcat server. So Tomcat 7, I am using MySQL database. So MySQL data source, if you say JNDA, so you should get this page. You just see here and then you can understand what is this all about, right? This is a good resource. You will just understand what is this JNDA. How to over, so Tomcat server, everything, and then I will just so you create a MySQL table. So now in this local machine I have this MySQL. So now root use Edureka is the database, and show tables users. I'll just take users now. So select star from users, right? So let me create this JNDA data source and then use this JSTL to write these queries to bring this data to UI. That much I will do now as a second demo, right? So first demo, what I have done, I have just springified my basic, I have just converted to Spring project, right? And then I have shown you how the entire flow, how it works in a Spring, right? So now let us add JNDA resource. So you just, if you are, as I said, if you are following this, right, you create table and then this JNDA data source, you should be there in your Tomcat context file, right? So you just copy these resources and then put it onto your Tomcat context file, and then this file resource reference, you need to do that in your WebXML. These 2 steps you need to do. So resource name, so services, Java JNDA naming definition interface. So now services, whatever you write, it will get integrated. So now in the server context itself, I am writing this naming service. So and then I am including that in my web XML like this. Let me show you how I have done this here. So now in the servers, you will have, when you have dynamic web applications created in the servers, you will create you will add Tomcat servers. So you will have this server link. So you just come to this context. So this line is what I am talking about. Now for my MySQL, so I have given name, data source name, reference name as JDBC Spring, right? And then JavaX data source, this is the type, right? So active connections, idle time, wait, username, password of MySQL, JDBC connector, sorry, that is jar file name, connector, driver name, and then JDBC MySQL localhost where it is running, database, everything I have specified here. So now once I have specified this in the servers, just like by using this name, I can connect to this database. That is the beauty, right? So resource name, I have this now, JDBC Spring. Let me minimize it. So now for my project, so in this XML file, right? In this XML file, I should map that. So now I have just written that here, adding JNDI in server context, what you need to do, everything I have put. Probably it will be really helpful for you to learn quickly, right? So and then in web XML, you need to copy this. So that means same name, JDBC Spring, you need to give with the type, whatever it is, right? So now you see here, just I will type it here. So now I am using JNDI in my application this way. That's all. I need to just WebXML. If I do, that is good enough. Insert JNDI lookup here. ID, name, everything we have given. Sorry. So now what I have done, I have just added JNDI. So now I need to add two other jar files. JSTL and MySQL connector is to connect to my MySQL from this Eclipse, my application, and then to show good UI by using these queries, right? JSTL tag libraries, if I have to use, I need to include these two jar files. Let me do that again. So now where I need to go? I need to go to this form XML dependencies add, right? So I say JSTL. So now you will see this servlet JSTL. This is good enough to take, and then add MySQL connector. So now you will get MySQL connector Java. You take this. So then again save it. So it will build it. It will download everything and then it will configure. So you want to confirm, you just come to here. You see here MySQL, JSTL, all these libraries have come here. All these files have come here. So what I did now, I have also added this jar file. So now let us this JNDI, let us test this JNDI connection. Let me test this JNDI connection. For this, what I am doing is, all of you try to understand what I am trying to show now. So in this home.jsp, I am just taking the input parameters. When I submit, it goes to the welcome file. I am writing a welcome file now to show how to use this JNDI, right? So again, new JSP file, welcome. Right, I am adding this JSP file. Now all of you observe here, tag lib libraries, I have taken C, SQL from this JSTL, which I have included now, right? Java server pages, tag library, JSTL. So core, SQL, core is basically you can embed like loops, all these things you can use inside your JSP page, and SQL again, so write queries, right? So now I'm just referring to this data source, all of you observe here, which I have defined inside this web XML itself, right? So in the web same name I need to give JDBC Spring. You see here I'm just referencing that as the RS. Then I am just sending this query to this data source. Then I'm taking that rows into row, and then I'm printing all the names in the UI, right? So now my login controller doesn't know how to call this welcome XML, right? Welcome JSP, right? Because if you send this home JSP sends contact action welcome, my controller doesn't know what to do. It knows only / if it comes sent to home. So you need to redirect, right? So that you need to add in the controller. So you need to map. So every request mapping you will do by using request mapping annotation. If it is this, you go there. If it is welcome, you go to welcome. So welcome again, it is there in the WebINF JSP page. So view resolver knows it has to search here with welcome.jsp, suffix also JSP. So now if you just give welcome, that is good enough. right? Now let us test this application, whether it fetches the data source and then shows all the data. What I am doing, I am not doing any verification in the welcome welcome JSP. I'm not doing any verification of the username password. I'm just taking it and then I'm writing it here, showing it here. So actually speaking, in the login controller, you need to write model object which will does the verification. It will does the verification. You need to write it here, right? Probably if time permits, let me check with you. If time permits, I will try to show that. Otherwise, we will continue on big data, right? So now let me show it. It looks like it is taking more time. So now let me show you this at least completely. Now what we have done, we have included JNDI for this project. So now if I run, right, so it should call this welcome program should use this query language, is this data source, and then show this data in the UI, right? So run as application, finish. I'm not verifying it, so I can type anything here. Okay, dispatcher servlet. I'm sorry for this. There is some error, I think. It says check login. Sometimes, right, this my Eclipse is really tricky. Let me just log out and check my luck, right? So D : Luna Eclipse, because I'm sure I'm not written anything of such sort, like, so let me just check my luck. So the restart, maybe this you might not have to do, right? So I'm facing little challenge here, even though I build new everything I do, so it gives sometimes problem. So this maybe I found out that this was the first, fastest solution, right? Log out, quit, and then come back. So maybe you might have, definitely you might not have to do this, right? So run on server. This will solve the problem. So again, let us see, because it's not verifying, I'm just give Tejas. Okay, page directive must not have multiple occurrences of page encoding. I think because of this, I kept everything in a single page, even though it is giving me error. Page encoding. So any quickly debug is Webin of JSP is welcome JSP. Page directive must not have multiple occurrences of page encoding. I think there is some issue in welcome.jsp. Let me just copy this again. Let me check my luck, right? I think I didn't delete it. I didn't overridden it. Is it? It looks like I just added it. It looks like that. Let me just check now. Yes, I think I have done a mistake there. So now, did you all notice by just giving JNDI name resource, so now my welcome.jsp use JDBC Spring, which is defined in JNDI, so it is using that resource and then it is running this query, and then this REST JSTL magic, it is been shown here. I'm sorry. Shown here, right? So now if you see the same data, we have it here, right? So this is how maybe again 60% of the, I mean, which I wanted to show you, probably I have done it. I thought I will also include DAO and then show it looks like time doesn't permit for big data, right? So friends, let me vote probably. Please, can I get, yes, you had 2 HTMLs. Yes, Evaristo, sorry for that. Yes. So you can share video recording or practical notes. Yes, yes, I will do that, Evaristo. Definitely I will share it. Right. So friends, probably I think another half an hour I may require if I cover this DAO with this big data integration. What do you say? Shall I go ahead, or probably I will just explain in the notepad what you need to do for data source. Probably that means for DAO classes you can do this at your end. Probably, what do you say? So now let me vote it. Probably it may take another 30 minutes. So shall I continue? Go ahead, 30 minutes is okay. Fantastic, Evaristo. So Krishnan also says, oh, go ahead. Fine, thank you very much, friends. Let me do this. So now what I show you is now creating DAO classes separately, right? Instead of writing codes here, all these queries here, so now we'll use separate DAO classes, and then how to configure those classes, everything we will see now, right? Probably quickly let me try to do this. So now first step is I need to create a users class. It is simple bean which reflects as same as my table structure. Username, password enabled. So now, and then to that I will add a DAO class, data access class. So now in this access class you will write all this get users, validate, right? All this business logic I am using in this, I have written in this DAO itself, right? So let me add this DAO to a separate package in my Eclipse, right? So again on source code I will just right click, so on source code right click, again new package, right? So now let me, instead of controller, let me say DAO, and right click and new, say class. So now let me take this class. Maybe I should be careful again here. If I do any mistake, definitely it doesn't work, right? By mistake I have overwritten that welcome JSP, right? So this users is the class name I need to convert. So I'll just convert it so it is in the same package, right? User Edureka DAO, that's fine. So now let me add one more new class. So that is this, all this business logic, right? I can implement in this DAO class. So now user DAO, I'm just deleting it. So again, all of you see here, user is a simple bean. User is a simple, let me close all these windows otherwise. So now this user is a simple bean, right? So now user DAO is a component, right? So observe here, I am also doing auto wiring of the data source. What is the data source? The JNDI data source. So let us see now how to map this later, right? So to this class data source, how to map, I will show you later. So now I am also writing get users. So get users, row mappers, so result set. So all these things is magic of this named parameter JDBC. So now queries also I am using. So now along with that I am also doing validation, right? So now I have these two classes inside here, right? How do I define these two classes are there here with these annotations? What I need to do is I need to write a configuration file. Like for this controller, we had this XML. I will add it. Probably you can add it here. So separate MVC pattern says separately I can create it and then manage it. So let me create one new package again to manage these configurations, right? So I will just type it as config as the package. So now I will create a web XML here. Again, I have specified this here. Create a new Spring Bean configuration file to DAO classes, to file to DAO classes and JNDI resource. Right. So steps you observe here. I will just created a package. So right click new. Again, I will create as a Spring. Same step. If you remember how I created the Bean alpha, it's like Bean configuration file, right? Same. I am creating one more thing, one more XML now. DAO context. So DAO context dot servlet. I have created inside this new XML file, right? So now I need to say there are some Java programs here in this. How to map it? Same step. Click here, go to context, right? Say yes. So now you tag will come. You come here, you say here right click in text context annotation config plus component scan. In the component scan, you just have this class path, just package name where you have this. Now what I have done is, you see here, again I am saying these classes I need to use here. I am saying these classes has to use here. Now you see in this class I am using data source. How to map? I am just saying auto wire it. Auto wire means basically I am linking this to this data source. So which I will create here in this package now. So how to link that I am showing you here. I'm sorry. So now the steps are there here. Write a new conbean. So now context file, this annotation config and this package I have done it now, right? So next again add this JNDA data source. Step by step you can follow this way, right? So now what I do is I need to add this JEE here. So now how to do that is namespace, again click JEE Java Enterprise Edition. So in this Java Enterprise Edition I can have that JNDA lookup, right? ID I will give it as data source and JNDA name, same name I need to give, JDBC Spring is the name, right? You need to recall that. So JDBC Spring and type is data source JavaX SQL, right? So this data source also and expected type also I'm saying here. So now if you go here, what I have done, I have connected to this jar files and then I'm also connecting this JNDA lookup, right? So now it is all explained here. So now finally, because I have created one new XML file itself here, I need to map that to in my XML. Right. So please copy this. This context loader will load these files. specific XML files if you have written, so that will be loading. So now you need to put that into your XML file. So context loader, so configuration, you need to specify which class path. So org Edureka Spring config, everything should match. So DAO context. So or simple, let me try to do this. Copy qualified name and then put that here. By mistake, if it is anything changed, so now I can remove this. So what I did, I have just given the path. Now I am referring, I have created my own XML file. I am referring that in the web XML, right? Again, this step is written. So now, right, what I have done is in the controller, I will write this check login functionality, and then I will call this user's DAO valid function here. Right? Let me explain this code again. I'm sorry. So now I have created DAO, all the classes. Now I need to call this method, right? DAO method. That's what I'm showing you now, how to call this. So now what I have done, see here, I am mapping this to check login. I have written a check method. I am taking model object. It is a UI model. What you need to add, anything, any object you need to add, you can take this model, and then you want to get the values into this request, you need to say this request param. Right? To request param, I am getting this username, password to this. So actually I am writing this logic in this login page, that is home page. Now I will change this to this action to verify, that is this check login. Right? Once I do this, now what I am doing, I am passing this to this servlet, sorry, Java context. So now Java context will find check login, and then it will call this DAO get users, and then based on the valid. So if it is valid user, so now I am written 0, that is not 0, that is if it is valid, I am calling all the users which is there in the DAO class, which I have written in the DAO class. I am calling the DAO class method itself here. Right? So once I do that, I don't have to write this query in my JSP page. So I will just come to this welcome.jsp. I will delete this query. Now important point, all of you observe here. Now in the login controller, right, after I do checking, I am going to return. If it is successful, I am adding this module to result all the users. So key value pair. So result is the object name, I am sending it here. So now in my welcome, I can use this result itself to read the data. So that means to this, I am also now in this example, I am sending the model back. What is the model? That is this, I have created this user DAO simple method I have done. So I have used this here user DAO. If it is valid, I am getting all the users into list. I am adding this user itself to this resource. Then I am returning it to welcome. Right? So you can observe this point, and then you can change that result here. Right? Checked login is also I have changed now. If everything fine, my luck is good, it should work fine with this DAO. Right? So now let me save all these files. Right click. Now I am running using this DAO classes to call my business logic. check function, whatever it is. So now in complex applications, we will use this DAO classes like this. So now if I say Tejas, okay, again some mistake I have done. Did anyone notice any mistake? Dispatcher servlet handler page not found. The welcome page again. Then dispatcher servlet. Also I have mapped it right. So after this adding JNDI, add JNDI I have done. I'm not sure why it says this error, right? So now welcome.jsp is also correct. In home.jsp check.login we have done. Probably let me just try my luck again by logging out and logging in. Maybe let me see what happens. I'm sorry for this, friends. Sometimes so definitely you may not have to do this. So maybe some problem. I do clean up a project, everything, still that problem persists. I need to just check what is happening. So now let me close all. Let me just recap what I have done. Maybe I can find if error persists. Let me recap it. Dispatcher servlet. Deployment assembly, Maven dependency is there. Let me just quickly recap. We are tested here, then everything was fine. So now I have added this program to Java files and then context.xml. So did I do any change here? The listener, I have just added context loader, right? I'm really sorry, friends. So now context scan, JNDI lookup in DAO context. Probably did I do in Java resources config file context. Yes, I have done this JNDA resource. In Spring, initially, all these small things might take dispatcher servlet. So now I have done this, add JNDI to it. So DAO context, add this DAO with WebXML, that I have done it. Listener to this, right? Then I am changing this controller. Home, check login also I have given. Remove this, all the steps I have done. Context. I'm really sorry, friends. This should have been working, right? Class path org spring config. There is no issue here, right? Let me just delete it and then add it. Public context, param, listener name. Let me add from this, maybe I'm just trying my luck. I'm sorry. So now context, this org, Edureka, Spring, config, DAO context, This is the file in WebXML, right? So next I have written this code. Let me check again this controller. So login, at least home page it should come, right? Home is also not coming. I'm really not sure what has happened, right? Probably there was some mistake there in that file. So now, so Tejas, if I say, see, not valid, right? So that means my controller now is getting that data from the login page. So now it is taking and then it is sending to this user valid. So now it is also checking here. So now not valid, I am sending back to welcome, right? In this user DAO, you can see in this user DAO, you can see if it is not valid, I am just printing this system.out.println. So that's where it is telling not valid. Right. So now if I give Edureka 1, 2, 3, so now it should pass. So now it should get the data. Right. So now what it is doing again inside user DAO validation, everything I have done. So now it is taking the data from there, right? So to quickly recap, what we have done is we have added a DAO classes separately and then configured that in XML so that we segregate all these concerns differently, business logic, UI is separate, now JSPs are separate, and then login controller, that is dispatcher controller, main controller is separate. Here we write everything. Also we can have multiple controller itself based on the application. Based on the modules itself, we can have different controller itself to map different things. Again, like this, we do have lots of features. Probably because of time permission may not go, so go ahead. So now probably I hope this will be really helpful. So now we created DAO classes, and then we use this. So XML files itself to configure. Again, this newly configured XML file, how to configure JNDI, everything we have seen, right? So now in actual production, what we do is we write service layer. Probably I want you to try this. I will give you this, all of you. So please take it and then try this service layer. So again, instead of calling DAO directly here, you will impose one more service layer which will be calling this DAO objects. That will be more elegant compared to directly calling this DAO objects, right? So you just follow this same thing again, create jar file, sorry, create Java class file, and then add this XML file, component scan and everything, and then point that XML file in web XML, and then change your controller class to call service method directly. Instead of calling DAO, you can do this service method, right? So I hope I will stop here. Probably you can try this, and then quickly, maybe another 10 minutes, I will just show you how to connect to Hadoop, right? I'm sorry, I just planned for half an hour, so because of some unexpected errors, so some more time I have taken, right? So now Hadoop, I hope all of you understand, right? So now what are the lab jar files, what we have included is been listed here, you can take it. And then application features, what we have done, probably I have also done a small application here. So you can also take this, maybe request this, and then observe all these features what we have incorporated here, right? So all these features, how we are all commented this. We'll give you document if you want, so you can see how to do AOP features, named JDBC templates, how to use. So now, but named JDBC template, auto wiring, we have seen. So exception, email, all these things we have in this project, which I just wanted to tell you that if you are interested, you can just request from support team. Mami, let me close all these things and run and show you, right? So it is basically a course calendar project, right, which has all these features. So it will be really helpful for you to learn, right? So next, let me take this, remove this, and then say finish, right? So start. Maybe I will take this to web browser, it will be nice, right? So Edureka 1, 2, 3, you can see this course calendar, you can add course, you can add trainers, and then you can define that course one calendar year, when it has to start. For example, so now you see here monthly analysis. If I see, I also have graphs generated here. So now in 11th month, right, November, I have 3 courses starting: MongoDB, Spring, Hadoop. So now yearly, if you have to choose how many courses are starting, you can say, for example, Hadoop. This one more graph we have used. So again, bar graph here. So like this, and then dashboard, I can see what are the courses are there here, trainers, who are the trainers are there, and courses assigned. So assigned courses, how much they have, how many courses are ready. Now what I can do is I can just come here and add one more course in the month of Hadoop itself in the month of say November itself, again say 20th it is starting, and then let it go till December 24th, and number of sessions say maybe again 10, submit. So now what I can do is I can just assign this course to a trainer. So now Hadoop course is one course assigned trainer. So now which I have assigned this November 20th, right? So I can select some trainers again, say so some trainers, and then assign it here. So now so when I assign, right, it also sends emails. So emailing is also done. So all these features is been incorporated. Probably if you need it, right, you can request support team. So probably we'll give this, and then also again monthly. Let me show you here. So now you can see 11th month Hadoop two courses. Hadoop, you see it has become 2 now. That graph is changed if you have noticed. So now again for exception handling, we have just passed this exception. If you click here, it goes to the error page because page not found. So we are just throwing our own customized exception errors. You can see all this project. Probably this may be really helpful for you, right? So all this adding courses, it's a course calendar project basically for you. Probably overall attending this, you can just request and then take it. So now coming back to this Hadoop, right? So Hadoop, what I have done is I have written a Spring application where we can run again word count application MapReduce programs, right? So now a small query. So now friends, I hope all of you, I get that Spring notepad and project on my mail ID. Please, all this project, everything, you please request to support team. I will send it to support team, and then this project also, course calendar, everything, I will organize it to send to you. Friends. Jaideep. So mention in a mail, right? You have attended this webinar, we will all do that, right? We will do that. Now because of time restriction, I will just explain what I have done here, what you need to do for big data connection from your Spring, right? So first step, what you need to do is you need to, now as usual, you need to take all the jar files. You use Maven itself. So in Maven, I have added 3 jar files of basic 3 jar files of basic Spring, and then Spring data Hadoop jar file also. Right. Once when you add this, first you need to write context. So XML file. This is the bin you need to configure. Right. So for configuring, you will do all this configuration here. So before you write configuration, let me explain. First, you will write MapReduce programs, mappers, reducers, right? Normal MapReduce programs, you will write it first. So and then in the bin context, you will include all of them as a configuration. So now in this Word file, right? I have given all this explanation. So now let me show you this one by one. See here for Hadoop, you need to say this as SDP and then link this. So what is this SDP is? It says just a namespace prefix. Spring for Apache Hadoop SDP, right? And then this web page is namespace URI. You need to give, and then right next you need to write this Hadoop context, Hadoop, and then this namespace URI, right? So now just you need to specify these two. If you have included your Hadoop jar file, it's easy to maybe again use that namespace and then Hadoop ticked here and then Hadoop ticked here and then create context. Otherwise, you just, if you're feeling really difficult to manage, so you just copy these 2 lines as it is in the context, right? So now this line I'm explaining here. So now this website is the URI, and then we need to specify this website to this XST file, that is the namespace URI location, right? So note that even the location points to the external address, right? So Spring resolve this schema locally. That means you should have jar files, otherwise it will give error. So now after you do these 2 lines, now you need to do configuration. So first I will write one property file which will use some general Java property file which will configure general properties. So now what I have done is I am using this AP properties. So where name node is running, where job tracker is running, input path, output path I am specifying here. Just one property file, right? Again, I can include that property file in this XML. Just probably you can write this code itself this way, right? This way, right? Next, what I'm doing is Hadoop configuration. I need to use this SDP itself. So prefix. So now configurations. I'm using this property file. I'm telling name and job tracker where it is running, right? And then job. After this configuration, I'm just talking about that is job details. After the configuration, so creating Hadoop job and then running. These 2 steps I am doing it here. So configuring Hadoop job, so input path, output path, whatever specified in the property file. So jar, my class, word mapper, reducer mapper, then running it. So this ID I am giving here, and then word count mapper run at startup. Right. So just I need to configure everything here. So again, you don't need any driver class file. So but again, because it is Spring enabled, right? So in main method here in this, because it's a standalone application, I'm using a application context file which is using this bean configuration file, which is injecting all this application programs what we required, right? So now I will change. Let me run this program. Probably I have this output file already defined here. Let me delete it, output path, right? Spring output, which is I think I have already defined here. So I will remove this Spring output. Spring output. So now I will run this program. So in this MapReduce again, so now what I have done is mapper is almost similar if you are familiar with MapReduce programming. So now let me just search for Hadoop, and then what I am doing it here is I am just checking if this contains this key. That means I am checking it here. Contains word this. So now if it is equal, I am sending it true. That will come as true, right? So now if it is true, I am counting it and then writing it. If it is true, I am counting it here. Finally, I am writing the output here, right? Otherwise, I am not counting. So now for each word, so now that is reducer, each I'm just finding each word how many times in the word count program, right? Probably if you know MapReduce initially, otherwise you need to learn MapReduce. You need to first understand why we write mappers, why we write reducers. I hope all of you know this. So now once you finish this, just click on the main data program, then right click, run as Java application. So it has run successfully without any error, and then it says please check output as I have done here. So now you just come to this Hadoop cluster. Probably I will open a web UI to see file system. So now I can see that it created this Spring output. Spring output, that is this, right? Or this, I think. Yes, that is this Spring output. So 2108, that is now it has created, right? So you can see it has counted word 4, that is from we have given Spring input as the file, right? So in Spring input we have Hadoop if you search. So I have 4 times, right? Control F. One, two, three, 4, right? So because this Hadoop here, it comes with apostrophe is yes, so now that is not counted, otherwise it is 4, right? So probably let me do one thing. That's what we have seen today. Probably let me plan separate Hadoop integration with Spring, so where I can show you all Hive and then HBase, all this integration with a simple application itself. Probably next month, right? So around December 1st week, let me plan for it. Probably you can all attend it, right? So because of time permit, Spring MVC with Hadoop, I could not do much. But yes, basic steps, I hope all of you understood, right? What you need to do, how to follow, how to write, maybe again. So now just you need to just quickly to recap, I've added property file in the configuration file. Again, I've added everything, all job related configurations, and then I've written these mappers here. I'm using this application context to load this from this bin file, right? So again, in this, how to use Hadoop running a Hadoop job is this finally, and how to implement this dependency injection in a web MVC. I've just given a brief. So problem here. So once when you learn web MVC, right, you can also just using request mapping, run job if it comes, running it here, auto-wired this web service which creates this job. You can try this later, right? Once you are thorough in web MVC, you can try this, right? Yes, I need to give this Word document, sorry, Notepad document, and then you all, I request maybe if you are interested, you can see this. You can request, you can take this calendar application also, friends. So can you ask support team to mail next demo webinar in December? Definitely I will do that. Definitely, Everest. Definitely. So I will do that. So thank you very much, friends. So now let me end up with ending note. So now what is Hadoop? Hadoop is basically a distributed file system with MapReduce framework, right? File system where it stores data, read, write we can do, and then analytics, and MapReduce is the processing framework where you can do a lot of analytics, right? So next we have seen the lab, and then there are a lot of job opportunities if you see as far as Spring is concerned, right? So a lot of projects, web applications, enterprise applications is using this Spring. If you see this trend opportunities, so Spring is really good, right? So now again we do have Spring courses coming, specifically Spring. So we focus on Spring with Hadoop as a project, that is the highlight here. So that will be a real-time project where you will be integrating. So it will be really helpful for your jobs, right? So complete Spring 4 oriented complete training of 8 modules we will be giving here. Probably if you want to check with a support team when these dates are started, you can do that, right? So I request you all keep in touch with support team. So probably yes. So next webinar, when I am showing, when I will just quickly create, maybe maximum by another 2 to 3 weeks, I should do separate webinar on this Hadoop integration, where so all application dedicated to Spring Hadoop, right? I will do that. Thank you very much, friends. Probably I hope all of you have started projects working. So now again, I wish you all of good luck. Probably great presentation. Thank you very much, Evaristo. Yes, Krishnan. So thank you very much. So probably, yes, as I said, you let us keep in touch. Basically, keep on, I mean, you write mails, anything related to projects. I hope everybody, Krishnan, Evaristo, you all started doing projects, right, on Hadoop itself, I hope. So probably, yes. So you can also update me on your projects also. Yes, Krishnan, you can do that. So Evaristo. So you need to get a project, is it? Yes, yes. So you please do write to me also. You send a mail to me, Evaristo. After this session, you can do that. I will also update that project's details, right? So thank you very much, friends. Good luck to all of you. Keep in touch. Take care. Bye bye, friends. Yes, Krishnan, Evaristo, thank you very much. Yes, Jadip. Yes, Dejip, thank you very much. Yes, Evaristo.